Hi everyone. I'm the director for our New Zealand registered not-for-profit Common Knowledge Trust. And we also hold all of the birth and birth coaching skills that we're known for 50 years at birthingbetter.org. How did I get involved in COVID long haul? Well, I caught COVID in March of 2020. I've been a naturopath for 50 years, so go figure. The idea that what we do can prevent us from getting it is probably unrealistic and probably has been unrealistic. They're just beginning to do some research as to why some people don't get it or are very asymptomatic. I had what I would call a moderate case. I got to the point where I had oppression in my chest and felt like I was going to have an intense allergic reaction. I put out, and I'm going to post on this link, the protocol that our trust put together when I was sick, because I use those things and have continued to use them for months afterwards because the symptoms didn't go away right away as we would have hoped. So one of the things I've been doing in this series is to try to sort of gently give information, knowledge. But it's also really important that I pass on skills because our trust common knowledge is based on a concept that you and I, your family, loved ones, your society, your community should be able to use any and all healthcare systems that you want. Primarily, there are three of them. There's the conventional medical system in modern countries. There's traditional healthcare. And so, for instance, traditional Chinese medicine or Thai massage, other things like that. And there's natural health. As a naturopath with 50 years of experience, I chose intentionally not to become licensed medically or to learn anything scientifically. So if you throw words around, you probably know more scientific terms than I do. But even though you have been diagnosed and you are being treated, the fact is that you have symptoms that aren't necessarily being cured or fixed. And those are the things that are driving you nuts. So when I started 50 years ago, I started with pregnancy and birth, disabilities, athletic injury, and athletic performance. And then in the early 1980s, I learned what was called nonverbal stress clearing because I had a lot of not people with disabilities, not athletes, but pregnant women who nattered on about their births because the whole issue of natural birth versus medical birth exploded in the 1970s. I couldn't do anything about anything, and so I'd tell people, go to a counselor. But in the 1980s, I'd learned this nonverbal stress clearing. So we're going to do a collective session on this in some sort of vague, bizarre kind of way. Now, why did I like this? I'm a person who's fairly private about my emotions, so I was not interested really in revealing personal things to other people. And I didn't want to hear it. Right? I didn't have any interest in what other people's problems were because I couldn't do anything about it. And there are people who are trained to help. So when this system developed, it developed because in the 1950s, late 1950s, was really the first time that modern medicine started to explore the brain. Every traditional culture around the world has thoughts about what's going on in our mind and our brain. So for instance, in India, they believe we have a monkey mind or a stampeding elephant. So we have many, 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 many thoughts, and meditation will help us either calm those thoughts down, just observe them, or reduce them. All of the martial arts has to do with mental training. So the mind is something that everybody's explored, but in the late 1950s, they started opening up people's brains and poking around in them when they were doing surgery and discovered, oh, there. But back then, there were only x-rays. There was no ultrasounds, no CAT scans, no PET scans, no MRIs. Now there are, and all of us have seen cross-sections of brains lit up in green and yellow and reds. And so the medical profession actually has a fairly good understanding of what happens. But when this system developed, it was developed by people who had no training in psychology, and so they didn't want to look at the issues that we had emotionally from a psychological viewpoint. we looked at it from a learning difficulty. For a lot of people like myself who have learning difficulties, we know how frustrating it is. On the other hand, all of us as humans are great problem solvers, and we problem solve left, right, and center. But there are some things that we just get stuck with. And when we get stuck with that problem, we have an issue with it. And that issue can last for a very, very long period of time. Now, what we learned, or what they learned, or medical profession learned, whoever you want to refer to, is that emotions have no words. And I'm going to repeat that. Emotions have no words. They're just emotions. We share as humans, as animals, mammals, but as animals, emotions with every other species on the planet. Every species feels anger, joy, depression, every. And it's sometimes called the lizard brain. And interestingly, our biggest experience about the lizard brain in the past few years has been tabloid print and tabloid cable TV. And it's a tactic to stimulate those emotions. It screams misinformation and lies at us in order to incite fears, angers, hatreds, and even obsessive adoration, like for celebrities. Then we become fascinated with what they're doing. Princess Diana was a perfect example of the craziness of tabloid. The anti-mask is another one, right? So tabloid is a recent, it's not particularly recent, but over the past few years, we have been bombarded by tabloidism with a tactic to stimulate those primal emotions, the lizard brain. And they do that in order to make money selling sensationalism, because we get addicted to those things. We get addicted to the rush of fear, the rush of anger, the rush of hatred. We hold on to those things for dear life. And those things stimulate our sympathetic nervous system because they're part of that reactivity. The fright, the flight, the fight, the freeze, the reaction. We live it within ourselves, we live it within our families, we live it within our societies. And we're living it as often as long haul people, because I read the long haul forums, and a lot of people are just in their sympathetic nervous system, partly because we're all so freaked and have good reason to be. This is unknown. We can't just go to a doctor and have them cure us or fix it. And we don't know what to do, and they don't know what to do. And so my obligation to myself and to society, using these platforms called social media, is, if possible, to bring benefit to other people. Because I've experienced benefit, and I've been working with acute COVID and long haul people. And so here you go. So how do you use this? I use it with people, even online, using muscle testing, which if you don't know how to muscle test yourself, you're going to say, well, I can't use it. But that's not necessarily accurate, because we have to always modify and adjust things. We always have to have a belief we can get there from here. That's crazy to believe that we're stuck and can't ever do anything. That just leaves us in our sympathetic nervous system, which feels we can't do anything, right? So we want to stimulate our parasympathetic nervous system, which took me a while to learn. I don't want to learn about it scientifically. I don't want to learn about all channels. I want to learn about things practically. How do I know whether I'm in my sympathetic nervous system or parasympathetic? And for me, it first started with the fact that sympathetic nervous system, to me, implied the good part. But it turned out that's the stress part. And the parasympathetic is the good part, the calm part. And I had to really, really feel it in myself, because a few years ago, I was finally diagnosed with a genetic metabolic disorder, which had caused me to have blocked arteries, even though I was a vegetarian for most of my life. I don't metabolize B vitamins, which are stress stress vitamins and the enzymes that help us metabolize food. So I have had a very high level of homocysteine, which is a stress hormone, and that damages the endothelial cells of our arteries. And there's a belief among the medical profession that this virus does that as well, that this is a blood vessel disease, which means that we want to stimulate and recognize being able to be in our parasympathetic nervous system, which calms us, opens our blood vessels, opens our lungs, opens up the vessels in our heart, stops the lizard brain from rampaging around in our minds and our bellies and our emotions, and lets us move into the cortical part of what is uniquely human, shared with whales and dolphins and primates. We can think. So when we're approaching this, you have to understand, and repeat after me, put this on your refrigerator, emotions have no words. They just have no words. They're just emotions. We feel them. Our solar plexus, that area down just below the ribs in the center of our body, which we call our stomach, has the same cells as our brain, this gray matter. So our stomach is considered to be our emotional brain, and our brain is considered to be our thinking brain. But we have this lizard brain back here, this reactive brain. And our cortex is up here. And what does our cortex do? It's basically big picture. It's problem solving. It's our skills. It's we sort things out. And it has no emotions, right? Which is good. So if we move our emotions up into our cortex, then we can problem solve it as a learning difficulty rather than feeling that we have a psychological problem. The other thing about this system, if we have a learning difficulty, it's based on a belief that we continue to grow and mature and gain new skills. So even 5 minutes ago, you weren't as skilled as you are now. That's good. That's how we grow. And that's why this generation of long-haul COVID people, we really have an obligation to work together and to work through these things so we can help other people. We need to mature. And one of the things that you can do, and I posted on the long haul one, is what's called the hero's journey, or it can be a heroine's journey. And you want to find those steps because we're all on this journey. And so when you look at this behavioral barometer, what you want to do is just feel what you're feeling and then see if you can match any of those. So there's a right and a left. So you can see on the top that those first three are in conscious, the middle ones, three are in conscious, and then there are two that are in body. Sorry, middle one's in subconscious. Did you catch me on that? Okay. And you see that within each, there are major topics like acceptance on the top and antagonism. That's the major one. And then underneath are 8. There's no order. It doesn't matter if you go this way or that way. You're just trying to match them. Okay. So if you feel that you have antagonism, so you're looking at the negative emotion, and you feel that that antagonism has a particular, let me check on mine for a minute. Okay, so let's say that antagonism has inadequate, which is the bottom right in that topic. Then the corresponding positive is acceptance and open. So what you want to do is to find the matching pairs. Okay, you can have a gazillion of them. Try to prioritize them the best you can, or try to just stick to 3, and you can always come back again. If there's a primary one, stick to 1. You don't have to make it more complicated than it already is. Okay, so what you want to do is to write those down, and you want to write them down in sort of the same fashion, where you have in the middle, whether it's conscious, subconscious body, and you have antagonism over here, acceptance over here, inadequate over here, and open over here. Okay. And then if you have another one, skip a space. Okay. and collect just a few. Or I shouldn't say that. Collect as many as you want. Okay, whatever you want. Okay, but if you overwhelm yourself, that's not because of me. All right. When you get acceptance and antagonism and inadequate and open, just ask yourself on a scale from 0 to 100, how inadequate and how antagonistic do you feel? Just whatever comes to your mind, write it down underneath, and then add to 100 on the left side. So if you say inadequate, antagonistic, I feel it big time. Well, put 99% there. Can't be 100% because we always know where we're going. We just aren't in that very much. So then put 1% under open and acceptance. So you're collecting a story. After you do that, you can ask questions of yourself and come up with a first response. Okay, do I need to find more on this? If the answer is yes, go for it. Same way. On the right, on the left, in the middle, you have a main topic, subtopic. Before you go on a scale from up to 100, how much is negative? The remainder is positive. Do that as much as you want. When I work with people, it usually stops after 3 or 4. That doesn't mean they're complete for the rest of their life. It just means for right now, that's as much as they can take. Okay. And then sometimes when we muscle test or kinesiology, then it will say there's something more. And so some of the questions you ask is this something I carried with me before COVID? And if your first response is yes, then write down it's an age thing. And if you can figure out what age it is, when did I start noticing this? Oh, when I was 12. Okay, write that down. Okay, does this have to do with symbolic male-female issues? If your answer is nah, don't write it down. How about spiritual issues? This has been a very spiritual experience for people, or anti-spiritual experience for people, or maybe even medical. I hear a lot of people really pissed off at their doctors that they can't cure them or fix them. They don't know. Right? So they're just ordinary human beings like you. They're trained. This is new to them. When you dismiss them, you're not helping. You're not helping you, you're not helping them. So you need to work on yourself, and you need to tell them what's helping, and you need to be very kind and patient with them. That's my rag for the day. So if this is a medical issue, then write that down. If any other issue comes up, husband, wife, male, female, kids, work, anything. If you feel it's a yes, just write it down. Okay. You can feel inadequate and antagonistic because you're going to go back to work. So just write these things down. This is your story, not mine. And after you find yourself going, enough, then that's enough. Okay. So those are feelings. The negative ones are feelings. The positive ones are the cortical skills that you're going to begin to use. This here is where your cortex is. These are your points. You can hold them like that when you do the clearing, or you can just put your hand over your forehead. And you can change hands when you want to. The other hand goes, I can't turn my head. Okay, if you go to the back of your head, that big bump, and come down, then you get to your neck, go up a little bit, go to the middle of your neck, go past the tendons on each side, and you will feel 2 hollows. Okay, they're 2 hollows. They're on the bone, right there. If you can't find them, don't stress. Just put your hand over that area and your hand here. You're going to sit in a comfortable place where you can read this. Okay, what you've created, your story. You're just going to take a few breaths. There's no rush. There's just no rush. Okay? And you are going to allow yourself to feel those negative emotions, okay, and the issue that you're feeling. Just indulge, where you hold on to here in the lower back of your head. Go through those negative emotions. Recognize that they have a high percentage of occupation in your body and mind now. That's why you did the 100% thing. How high is it? Not everybody has 99%. Some people have only 57%. Doesn't matter. And after you've indulged and felt it, then you want to match the cortical responses. So if you sat there for 2 minutes or so feeling inadequate antagonism, you don't want to be sitting there long in it, a few minutes will do, then go over to open acceptance. You still got your hands here. Don't take your hands off. I'm taking my hands off because I'm talking to you, because it looks really silly if I'm sitting there doing this the whole time. Okay, so you do that the whole time. You keep breathing. So go over to open acceptance. What does that mean to you? Just let yourself feel it. And if you've, for this one, included work issues, relationship issues, age issues, spiritual issues, then ask yourself, within the context of those things, how do I feel and use open acceptance? And at some point, you will feel calmer. That calmness is your body activating the parasympathetic nervous system and reducing the sympathetic nervous system. The antagonism, the inadequate antagonism, is really that screaming tabloidism. And if anything can keep you in that, then it can capture you. You have to choose to move into open acceptance. And then you have to choose to create form to that. What do you put in place? How does that live and exist and flourish? And then at a certain point, you just feel, I feel better. Take your hands off your head and then go back and ask yourself, am I still 99% of an adequate antagonism? And if your system goes, nah, then just, what is it? Not very high. So you can write down not very high. And how big is open acceptance now? God, I feel better. So write that down. However you want to notate this. Date this paper. Collect these stories. Put the issue that you might have been working on the top of it. If this was a general, just write general and date it. You can be more specific with issues. This is yours to use now. All of us are in this together. If we're people like myself, who still kind of periodically gets episodes, I can't quite tell, or you're really just crashing through them. We're in this together. You can be very specific with an issue and just that's your intent, and feel what that issue makes you feel. And you will find your story. And by holding on to cortical points and the eye nerves where they cross over, you get inner vision with clear insight. That's good. But when your cortex gets activated, your parasympathetic nervous system does. When it gets activated, you, your mind, your emotions, and your body, you, have a responsibility to keep that parasympathetic nervous system activated and not permit yourself as often and as intensely to be sucked in to the tabloidism of reactivity. It is addictive to feel fears, angers, hatreds, and all the other feelings that we can have. They are addictive. We have to choose to move out of the addiction of them. And we do that by stimulating the gift that we are all given, which is the cortex of skills, capability. Thank you very much. I hope some of you benefit from this. I'll keep doing skills and I'll keep doing information as well. Take care. Wellness is available. You may not get perfect, but that's okay.